Awesome. Well, we will go ahead and get started. My talk today is the care and feeding of Magento developers. You can find me on Twitter at Joshua S. Warren, so I got that up there. So first off, I'm going to start with some introductions. If you saw an early version of the schedule, you might have seen that this has been Mark's talk. It actually was originally been Mark's talk, and I have taken his slides and reworked them. I took a pretty similar path to Ben, but there's really two differences between kind of the approach I'm taking to this and Ben. First of all, that is Ben Marks. I have never ever had hair like that. That's the first and biggest difference between me and Ben. And then second, I'm not a Magento employee. Not all of us are able to be paid to travel around the world talking about Magento. Ben has gone from Argentina to LA to Australia in the past week, so I don't know if I'm actually jealous of that because that's a lot of jet lag. But so who am I then? I'm a Magento developer. I have over 5,000 hours of Magento development time. I recently created a site called mageunity.com just to provide a forum for the Magento community to just talk. I'm also founder of Creatuity. Our first Magento project was in 2008, and I was the first employee, the only employee for a little while, and the first developer. Since then, we've grown to almost 30 employees. I don't get to do much development work anymore with all that growth. So a lot of my time I spend mentoring the developers that are doing that development work. So who are you? How many of you guys are Magento developers or want to be Magento developers? And how many of y'all either manage developers, hire developers, anything like that? Okay, so got a nice mix. So first up, we're going to talk a little bit about hiring Magento developers. And even if you aren't hiring, but you just are a Magento developer, this is some really good content so you realize what companies are looking at when they're trying to hire you. First of all, one does not simply hire a Magento developer. It is not that easy. There's over 2,000 Magento certified developers, which at first sounds like a lot, but compare that to the fact that there's over 120,000 Magento sites. That means if every site is going to be serviced by a Magento certified developer, we would all have to be working on 6 sites simultaneously. So it's a little bit of a supply and demand problem. There's a lot more jobs than there are developers. Because of that, developers are setting their own terms, and they're just hard to find. The solution to that problem, you don't hire Magento developers. You hire solid, great PHP developers. There's actually a book out there called Smart and Gets Things Done by the guy who writes the blog Joel on Software, and it's all about hiring developers. And he talks about how what you look for is you look for really smart developers that know how to get things done, and then you train them on everything else. Once you hire these PHP developers, the trick is you have to help them learn Magento and then help them grow as a Magento developer. So we're going to talk a little bit now about learning Magento. So if you're a developer, this is the part that you're going to be really interested in, is kind of the process of the right way to go about learning Magento. So that's how a lot of people feel when they first start learning Magento. It's a lot of information that you're trying to cram into your brain, so it can seem a little painful. Because of that, Magento's gotten this reputation that it's just hard to learn. It is a complex system. There is a steep learning curve, but it's not necessarily that Magento is even that hard to learn. It's that e-commerce is really complex. The world of e-commerce is very different from the world of, say, building a CMS. With e-commerce, we're handling people's credit card numbers. We're handling businesses that are doing millions of dollars of revenue. I mean, these are very serious, high-stakes sort of things that we're working on. So there's a lot of complexity around e-commerce. You can't necessarily just knock out a page in PHP, upload it, and you're done. There's a lot more that goes into it, and you have to be really confident in the work you're doing. Also, training is hard. As a community and as a platform, Magento kind of struggled with this at first because it's honestly hard to put together really good training. I think that hopefully some of y'all that saw my training session on Tuesday about Magento, you saw that even in 3.5 hours, it is hard to get across a good level of content to really help you learn Magento. So it's just hard to build training. It takes a lot of time. It's just very complex. So because of that, because e-commerce is complex and because training is hard, Magento got this reputation that it's just a hard platform to learn. The other problem is the number one way not to learn Magento is trial by fire, sink or swim. It doesn't work. It's funny, I was actually talking to another developer here who said he had done one Magento project. He said he'll never do Magento again. And actually Fabrizio asked him, said, before you started this Magento project, what sort of training did you have? He said, oh, I didn't have any training. My boss gave me Magento Enterprise, said, hey, we just bought this great software platform, build it, implement it, make it happen. But no, we're not going to pay for a solutions integrator to help you. We're not going to pay for any training for you. You're just going to figure it out and make it happen. So that's not the way to do it. That's where we end up with bad Magento implementations. That's where we end up with developers who don't learn Magento the right way, that make all the common mistakes, that do things like modifying the Magento core. It's not because they're bad developers. It's because they were just thrown in there and said, figure it out. So how do you learn Magento? The easiest way to learn Magento is focus on culture and community. And when I say culture, you need to build a culture of constant learning to help your Magento developers succeed. Or if you're just an individual developer, just always be learning. Every day say, okay, what new thing can I learn about Magento? What new thing can I do to improve my skills as a PHP developer? You need to build a learning culture. Basically, on your team, everyone should be teaching, everyone should be learning. We have kind of a habit of, okay, senior developers are going to teach the junior developers. Don't assume that your junior developers, that your new hires, don't have something good to teach you. Encourage them from the very beginning. Everyone on your team should be sharing their knowledge and should be teaching each other and should have an attitude that they all want to learn. At Creatuity, one of our core values is constantly improving. We basically tell everyone that the expectation and sort of the standard we hold everyone to is that you are always learning, you are always improving. And I think that that's really helped our team over the years. A lot of them started with no Magento experience whatsoever, and just through this not only training process of learning Magento, but having that attitude of always improving has helped them so much. With that though, set reasonable expectations, either for yourself or for the other developers you're working with. I know a lot of people say, well, I'm going to hire this developer, I'm going to send them to a training course, and in a month they're going to know everything they need to know, they're going to be doing Magento projects, it's going to be great. That's not reasonable. That's just almost as bad as trial by fire and just throwing them in. So you really need to upfront develop a training plan and set expectations and say, look, Magento is a complex system. We're going to give you some time to learn it. So I'm going to run through how we onboard new developers at Creatuity and take a PHP developer and turn them into a Magento developer. So again, whether you're representing a company or just yourself, this is a good process that you can even follow as an individual. So we start real simple. We start with a lot of reading. We start by reading and learning Magento basics. There's some good books out there, like Grokking Magento, that we give our employees. We say, okay, just take some time, no pressure, and just work through these books, work through this material. Yeah.
When you said there is a steep learning curve on Magento, I don't know anything about Magento.
Okay.
How is the learning curve compared to Drupal?
In my opinion,
Can you compare those two?
Honestly, in my opinion, I had kind of a rough time learning Drupal. So I think that at this point especially, they're fairly similar. A lot of that depends, though. If you've never done anything with e-commerce, you're learning Magento and you're learning e-commerce at the same time. So you're not just learning a new framework, you're learning a new way of doing business. So that's kind of the added complexity. So.
And how is the documentation?
Better. In Magento 2, it is great. Magento 1, it's getting there. So it's definitely better. And there are good books. There's a lot of resources I'm going to show a little later on that you can go to on the web too. That if it's not documented, chances are there's someone in the community that has already experimented with that part of Magento and can answer your questions. So that helps. Yeah.
Also, it also depends on the version of Drupal you're learning.
Yeah, yeah.
If you're starting with Drupal 8,
Yeah.
coming from PHP, Drupal might be easier than Magento. If you're going back any earlier than 8, like 7, which is what's actually current right now, then it's a very steep learning curve. But if you're not coming from a PHP background, and you're just coming from a programmer, developer background, then the learning curve is equal either way. But if you're coming from an already existing PHP background, Magento might be easier than the earlier versions of Drupal.
Yeah,
Because Drupal has a very steep learning curve.
Yeah.
I haven't worked with it, but I've tried. I've been developing for 16 years with PHP specifically. I haven't developed with Drupal, but I've tried.
yeah,
But I haven't even tried Magento, so I can't actually make the comparison. But it sounds like Magento might be easier in some cases.
Well, the other thing is like Magento 1 is based on Zen Framework 1. So if you've ever used Zen Framework, that gives you a little bit of a shortcut. Right. So that helps. But. All right, so after we have our new hires reading and learning Magento basics, we throw them sort of into a mini trial by fire. We say, okay, write an extension. We actually do this knowing that they may not be able to successfully complete that project. They may not know enough yet, and that's the point. We're making sure that they realize that even after all the reading, once you get some hands-on experience with Magento, that's when you realize just what else you still need to learn. So then we take another step back from coding, go back a little bit to reading. We have them complete the Magento Certification Study Guide, work through all the exercises, and use that to kind of finish out their training. And then the last step is they become Magento certified. And that's kind of a standard we've set of they don't go on to work on client sites until they're Magento certified, just so we kind of know that, okay, here's someone that has taken the time to learn this material and go through this process.
So that's after someone's been hired, they go through that process. How long does that process usually take?
Good question. I actually was talking to some of our team members about that and trying to find kind of the shortest and the longest. We've had someone do that in as little as 2 months, but that was someone that was really pushing. I would say usually 3 to 6 months. And so we're going to talk a little bit more in a second about how it's not the cheapest way of doing it, but it is, at least in our experience, the best way. With this, though, because we are throwing a lot of material at them, we're doing things like having them try to write an extension. We do formal progress reviews every 2 weeks, and we do this actually primarily for reassurance. Everyone in their first review says, I'm not doing very good at all, I'm not learning this material fast enough, I should be doing better. And we have to explain to them, look, you're right in line with where you need to be, that you are tracking towards learning Magento and the level of knowledge you need to have. We also use that, though, if we do see a specific area where they're struggling in, if there's a specific spot that we're like, okay, you need to study a little bit more on this. It's a lot better to catch it every 2 weeks than to have them go through 3 months of training and then say, oh, wait, go back and start over. So if you are an individual developer, what I would recommend, I know that people were talking about the PHP mentoring site earlier. Go out there, find a mentor, find someone in the Magento community that's willing to kind of just reality check how your progress is going that you can talk to. I know there's people out there that like doing that like helping developers kind of join the Magento community, the Magento world. So if you don't have someone at your job or in your freelance career that already knows Magento that can do that for you, reach out to the Magento community, find someone, because that does. Otherwise, I've seen so many people get like a month into learning Magento and say, I'm not learning this fast enough, this must not be the platform for me, and they move on. And it's not that they aren't able to learn it, it's that they kind of just psych themselves out and they quit too soon. So what the other thing we do is we actually now start with interns. Again, there's not enough Magento developers out there. There's not even enough PHP developers out there in a lot of cases. So what we've done is we've partnered with a lot of local universities, and we find students that are in, really any degree program, but it tends to be computer science and information technology. And we bring them in as interns. And this is how we build a steady pipeline of new Magento developers. It takes a little bit longer, but it provides great results. So our development internships, they're a 3-month internship, and it's all about learning the basics of Magento. They're not doing anything necessarily for our clients or even for our own internal work. They are just spending 3 months learning Magento. And that's where we kind of get a sense for, are they a good fit for our company? Do they enjoy working with us? Are they learning Magento well? The best interns then get invited back for a second internship, and that's where they start coding. That's where we start giving them some projects. Usually some of our extension projects or internal projects. We'll give them some projects and we'll say, okay, you're going to write some Magento code. We're going to see what you think about this. And then depending on how that goes, we tell them, okay, so now here's the Magento exam study guide. We kind of have an internal process we take as well for helping them learn the Magento exam and the Magento certification. We say, okay, now you're going to prepare for the Magento certification exam. And at that point, if they're not scared, then that's usually a good sign. And what we do is after these 2 internship periods, so after 6 months, we set objectives for them to become a permanent member of our team. Basically, they have to graduate, they have to become Magento certified, and then we'll usually pick one big project that they need to complete. Some type of integration that we have been working on or something like that. So our development internships, the absolute fastest time anyone has ever completed this has been 7 months. So it's not fast, it's not cheap, but it gives the best long-term results. It's a good way, kind of a low-stakes way for someone to go from sometimes no knowledge of PHP, sometimes just a self-taught level of the level you'd be at with PHP in college if you're teaching yourself. And then we transition them into being a full certified Magento developer. So that's been very successful for us, and I would definitely encourage you, if you're working on a team, to try something like that, to suggest something like that. So let's say you have learned Magento, you're a Magento developer, you might even be certified. The learning's not done. You will continue to grow as a Magento developer, and you should continue to push yourself to grow and learn more about Magento. As a community, with the commitment to open source, there are new technologies, new tools being released in the Magento community every day. So it's important to just keep growing as a Magento developer so that you stay up to date with those things. And I think personally, the secret to growth and success as a Magento developer is to participate in the Magento community. Just get out there, even if you're not necessarily coding, just get out there and get involved with the community. And that is going to help you so much. It's amazing just the conversations you'll have over lunch or in the hallway at these sort of events or on Reddit, on Stack Exchange. These little things where you're not even necessarily working on practical coding examples. You learn so much. You pick up so much from each other. So the Magento community, it's kind of a silly place. We use a lot of memes. We have a lot of bad jokes. We have a lot of inside jokes. It's definitely a fun community to be a part of. I think that on one hand, while Magento may have a steep learning curve, I think it's absolutely worth it because it has one of the most engaged and just fun communities around any open source project I've ever been involved in. So there's a lot of different Magento events. There's a lot of different just silly things that we do as a community. And so it's very rewarding to learn Magento, to grow as a developer, to get involved in that community. As far as the community goes, just jump in. Don't be afraid. The biggest complaint that I hear about the Magento community, people say, why didn't I jump in sooner? Why didn't I get involved sooner? Why did it take me so long to do this? So definitely don't be afraid just to get out there. We do have, like any open source project, we have some people with strong opinions. We have some people that are a little wary of newcomers, but for the most part, it's a very welcoming group. They all want to see Magento succeed. They all want to see you succeed as a Magento developer. No one is going to make fun of you because of the level of your Magento knowledge. No one is going to think less of you because you're new in Magento. It's a very welcoming place. Some of the smartest people in the Magento community spend a lot of their time just helping newcomers, just helping people learn Magento. And that's the value of the Magento community. In the Magento community, it's just amazing how much we share new ideas, innovations, and best practices. And it's kind of strange to me. It took me a little while to get used to this because we're dealing in e-commerce. Most of us are working for agencies or in our freelance careers where we're making a lot of money and we're competing with each other. And there's a lot of contracts, a lot of things like that going on that I think in any other industry you would not see this level of cooperation. You would not see people helping each other. You see kind of that cutthroat competition. That doesn't happen. I mean, it's amazing. I will see at some of these events where founders or executives of several different agencies that I know compete all the time with each other just sit down and talk about, okay, well, how have you been taking care of this and how have you been doing that, and just openly share their knowledge. And that, to me, is the value of the community and why you absolutely should get involved. So if you want to get involved in the Magento community, there's a lot of ways to do it. You can, like any open source project, there's a lot of open source efforts you can contribute to. You can go out there on GitHub. There's just tons of work being done. If you're interested in Composer, there's a lot of different projects around Composer right now. If you're interested in testing, there's a lot of different projects around testing. So there's a lot of things that even with a low level of Magento knowledge, you can still get involved and contribute. Get active on the Magento Stack Exchange. Not only is it a good place to ask questions when you're kind of stumped on a problem, but also we always need help with people just helping us kind of clean it out, keep it up to date, that sort of thing. So just go out there and check that out and get involved. Of course, I have to mention Twitter. As many of y'all have seen, I'm pretty active there. A lot of the Magento community is on Twitter, and it's definitely a great place to connect. We use a hashtag now, some of us do at least, of hashtag #RealMagento, just because there's a lot of spam around the word Magento on Twitter. There's also a lot of X-Men fans that can't spell. They call it Magneto and Magento, and yeah. So definitely just tweet hashtag #RealMagento. If you're still having a hard time kind of getting involved with the community on Twitter, tweet at Ben Marks. He is the Magento evangelist. He, like I mentioned earlier, he does a lot of traveling. He's at a lot of events, but somehow he still finds time. People will tweet. Sometimes even irate people will tweet about a very specific issue they're having with Magento, and he'll take the time to reply and at least connect them to the right person. You can also, if you're getting involved in Twitter, kind of want to connect with the Magento community more, do feel free to tweet at me as well. And as these guys, especially over here, can tell you, I spend a lot of time on Twitter and can hopefully answer your questions, connect you to the right people, that sort of thing. Another way to engage with the Magento community, attend Magento Imagine. It's an annual conference. It's in April of next year in Las Vegas. I believe the URL is something like imagine2015.magento.com, but if you just Google for Magento Imagine, you'll find it. Tickets should be going on sale soon, they tell us, probably by the end of the year. It is for the entire Magento community and the Magento ecosystem, so it's everything from development tracks to business tracks to things that are more sales focused. So it's a huge event. There's usually a developer hackathon, there's a bar camp, there's a lot of different ways to get involved at the event. But then also you will meet so many Magento developers and so many people from the Magento community just in the hallways, just after the sessions and that sort of thing. There's also a community series of events called Meet Magento. These, until now, have primarily been in Europe and overseas. However, this year we had the first one in New York, so it's spreading slowly to the US. These are usually short 1 or 1.5 day events, and it's just very focused on the community, organized by the community. Then real quick, we're just going to go through some URLs. There is the Magento subreddit. There's the site I mentioned earlier, Mage Unity. And then 2 more things I wanted to mention. There's a new podcast called Mage Talk that's by 2 very active Magento community members. It's another good way if you just want to kind of download that to your phone, listen to it on the way to work or as you're running errands. It's a good way to keep up with what's going on in the community. And probably the newest site in the Magento community is magehero.com, which I think as a community we're still figuring out what that's even going to be. But right now, it is a listing of Magento developers, and it has a way that you can link it to your Twitter account. So again, if you're getting involved on Twitter, you're trying to connect with some Magento developers, go to Mage Hero, and you can very easily see all their Twitter IDs and connect with them that way. So, next steps. If you're a developer, just get out there and try Magento. That is the best way to kind of start this process. Magento U, which is the training division of Magento, has on-demand courses. They have a couple that are free. Most of the development ones now are paid, but they're not too expensive, especially the Fundamentals of Development course is 40 hours long, so it's a solid bit of content you're getting there. There's a Magento developer, or PHP developer, he's doing some Laravel work as well, called Alan Storm, and he blogs like crazy. He has a great bit of content out there about Magento, diving into a lot of the specifics of Magento development. Go to his site and just read it. There's a lot of good info there. There's also a book series by a couple of members of the Magento community called Grokking Magento. The first one is out now. Hopefully the second one will be out soon. We'll see. We've been waiting on it for a little while. It's a good book to kind of get started with. And then managers, whether you're a hiring manager or if you even just want to take this back to a hiring manager, stop chasing the ideal candidate. Stop, there's all these recruiters that I see spamming people in the Magento community that are saying that you need to have 10 years of Magento experience, even though Magento hasn't been around that long. You need to have every Magento certification there is. You need to have built this many Magento sites. That's not the way to do it. Don't go about it that way. Instead, find really good PHP developers and give them the opportunity to learn, give them the opportunity to interact with the community, and that's how you can build a really solid team of Magento developers. So, thank y'all very much. I know it's early, so I appreciate y'all being here. And I'll have the talk up on JoinedIn. Please do rate it as well. And then you can also find me on my blog at joshuawarren.com and on Twitter at Joshua S. Warren. So, y'all have any questions? All right.
How much time do you spend, or do anybody at Creatuity spend to onboard a developer, or is that always happening in pod? So what's the amount of time you invest to do that?
A lot. We actually, one of our best developers, which now I've just offended the rest of the team, but one of our best developers, he actually was telling me recently, he says, I sit down and we send some of the hardest problems to him, and he'll sit down and he'll start working on it. And then someone has a question, and then another trainee has a question, and then he goes back to work, and then another trainee has a question. So he actually spends, when we have someone new that's just kind of coming on board, I would say up to 80% of his day he's spending just helping them. So it's a significant amount of time. It's not... The companies out there that I see that are just hiring hundreds of developers and kind of throwing them at problems, they're looking kind of to make a quick buck, in my opinion, whereas we're taking a more slow and steady approach of let's get these people on board, let's turn them into really solid Magento developers that can help us with projects for years and years. So yeah, it takes a lot of time.
Just to answer that, another approach is we have pairs, so we always have one senior and one junior developer. So that you don't have 5 juniors coming to the same senior work, which actually cannot do any work anymore.
Yeah.
And so there's always the one person which you can really ask, and that person has at least some time because he has only one trainee or one junior when she has giving his advice to him.
And is it actual formal pair programming, or is it just each trainee has one person that they're supposed to ask their questions to?
First of all, it's just one trainee who has one person who gives questions to, but it can also be pair programming from time to time. It depends.
And you have them sit next to each other, or?
Yeah, they're definitely in the same room.
Okay, nice. That's a good idea. And that is a lot of it. The best way to learn Magento is from someone who knows Magento. Even if they're not sitting down and walking you through the entire process, but just having someone that you can talk to, whether it's someone else at your job or someone online that can kind of point you in the right direction and help you out. That's the way to do it. So any other questions? All right.
I remember Phil talking about the podcast about this training program that he's kind of been trying to create internally to train new members. Most likely you guys do very similar things. We don't have the masses to think about having a generic thing to do, but I see there is an opportunity to try to come up with something like a training plan, share that with maybe goals per week or so, similar to the exercises for the certification exam thing, but more focused on more generic on what do you do, what blog posts do you point the persons to in the first week. I'm not sure if that makes sense to try to bring people together like you and Phil, and I'm sure there's a lot more people who do the same thing to come up with something like onboarding PHP developer, and maybe even onboarding a developer that has experience with another programming language. Just an idea, I'm not sure if that's
So basically sort of like open source training plans. Yeah. No, I like that, because then also, let's say you're an individual developer, you work for yourself, you don't have someone giving you a training plan, they could benefit from that as well. So, yeah.
The fundamentals course is great, but it only covers like a small section.
Yeah.
Right? So it still won't tell you how to deal with shipping methods or whatever. But you will need that. So, yeah.
Well, and there's a lot of problems and a lot of things you don't really learn until you experience them. So, yeah, it'd be good to have a plan that kind of points those things out. So, yeah, that's a good idea. All right, any other questions? Cool. Well, thank you all very much. And again, go to Joined In for the slides and do rate the talk. And when you rate it, give me some feedback, give me some actual comments. I do really appreciate those. So, thank y'all.